Welcome. My name is Lori Coles. I'm a physical therapist, and I'll be presenting today on injury prevention for runners. I'm a runner, and runners are some of my favorite patients to see in the clinic. So I thought I'd put this presentation together for all of you guys. Some of the resources I used, I took a rehabilitation for the injured runner course last year that's hosted by ICE Physio, so Institute for Clinical Excellence. And a lot of my information came from there. And then I also read an article by Chris Johnson, who's a physical therapist, in Outside Magazine. That was really good. And you can find more information about those on the references page. So running injuries, why is this important? Because there are a lot of runners. There are 50 million runners in the United States. And you can see this graphic to the right is registered marathon participants over time. And that number just keeps going up. Also, our runners look a little differently today than they did back in the 70s. It was mostly young, fit men. And now if you go to any race start, you can see a pretty even split between men and women and all ages and all body types, which is excellent because running is really good for you and fun. Unfortunately, though, 75% of runners will have a running related injury each year. And so, and that is an injury to the point of having to modify their training plan or stop running. And so we'd like to see that percentage drop. I would, at least. And so when does injury happen? Injury happens when the load exceeds the load capacity of a tissue. And a tissue is any part of your body. So muscle, bone, tendon, ligament. And each of those structures in your body has its own load capacity based on various factors, including your previous training, time since your last training, previous injuries, illness, diet, age, sleep, genes, all of those things. And if you've had an injury, then you know that that's kind of your weakest link when you go out for another run. When you start to get back into it, that's where your body's going to feel it the most because that tissue doesn't have the load capacity of the rest of your tissues. So during your run, while you're running, each stride that you take increases the cumulative load on these tissues. So the longer runs have a bigger load than the shorter runs. Load magnitude is how big is that load, and that's dependent upon body weight. Most sources say anywhere from 2 to 5 times your body weight is the force that's going through your tissues with each step. Terrain, so running uphill is different than downhill, and running speed. So the faster you run, the bigger the load that you'll have on your tissues. Load distribution is where that load is felt in your body. So that's dependent upon your body shape, your stride mechanics, your footwear, and the surface that you're running on. So when does injury happen? It happens when there's a change in any of these things, a change in these loads. So change in your amount of running, your cumulative load, change in your load capacity. So you're sick, you got poor sleep, poor nutrition, dehydration, a change in the magnitude of load. So that size of the load. So if you're adding speed work, you're changing your terrain, or a change in the distribution of load. You got a new pair of shoes or changed your running mechanics, that sort of thing. So where do the running injuries happen? Mostly in the knees and the foot and ankle, and that makes a lot of sense. That's where the load distribution is for runners, and that's where the overuse injuries are going to happen. So does footwear matter? Yes and no. So yes, because a change in the style of footwear can change the distribution of the load and put you at an increased risk of injury. But there's no research to support one style, brand, model of shoe over another. There's no change in rate of injury based on shoe type. So whether you wear a motion control shoe, a cushion shoe, a zero drop shoe, that rate of injury is still the same. So biggest takeaways for this is to wear the style of shoe that's comfortable for you. And when you do want to change your type of shoe, because there are a lot of legitimate reasons to change. You want a lighter shoe for racing. You want a more rugged shoe for trail running. That's fine, but transition slowly to minimize your risk of injury. Don't just jump into a zero drop shoe and wear it on your long run. Wear those new shoes on a shorter run, on a mile or two, easy run, before you're wearing it for your speed work, before you're wearing it for your long runs. Does running surface matter? Yeah, again, yes and no. So a drastic change in the running surface can cause changes in the load magnitude and distribution. So people end up running into trouble when they do most of their training on trails and then they have a race on pavement, or vice versa. But there is no difference in rate of injury based on the running surface. Runners will adapt their mechanics to the running surface that they train on. So whether you're training primarily on the track, on roads, or trails, your body will accommodate that and acclimate to that surface, that load magnitude, that load distribution. So big takeaways: train where you plan to race. If you have a big trail run coming up, run on trails. If you aren't, necessarily training, but you want to just get your body as injury proof as possible, incorporate various running surfaces into your training. So you can vary the load magnitude, the load distribution, and prepare your body for those different types of runs that might come up. So throwing some track workouts in, running on trails, running on paved trails, roads, all of that to kind of keep your body fit and able to handle different loads as different runs come up. Does foot strike matter? So I like this photo because you can see how the terrain there is changing everyone's foot strike and where they're hitting the ground. And there is a common misconception that forefoot striking is better than rear foot striking. But there's actually the same rate of injuries between both groups. And forefoot strikers just tend to injure the foot and ankle. And that makes sense because if you're landing on your toe, that load distribution is going to be closer to the foot and ankle. Mid and rear foot strikers tend to injure the knee and hip. And that also makes sense. You put your heel down, your midfoot down, you're going to feel that force more higher up the chain. But we do want to avoid some of that hard heel striking. So when you're really overstriding and throwing that heel down, the load magnitude increases, and that will put you at a little higher risk for injury. And so you can kind of look at some of these foot strike comparisons. These are photos from the video running gait analysis that I've done in the past. And this is just one metric that I look at when looking at a running gait analysis. And so you can see the runner on the left is over striking with a pretty good heel strike. You can see how high her toes are off the surface at her point of initial contact there. And so for her, we would want to bring that in. And we can often do that by manipulating her cadence with her gait retraining. So trying to get her to take a little shorter step, bringing that in, and that will naturally kind of have her be more of a midfoot or rear foot striker, kind of like the middle runner. You can see when at initial contact, her heel is pretty much right under the front of her hip. And that's a good rear foot striking position. And then on the right, we can see the forefoot striking position. So he lands on his toes at initial contact, and his foot is directly under the front of his hip. So best ways to get injured. So we're going to go over all of these: inconsistent training, not listening to your body, running through the pain, skipping your warm-ups and cool downs, and avoiding the weight room. So inconsistent training, this usually looks one of two ways. Either the runners come in and they're like, well, running hurts and I only do it about 1 or 2 days a week. And that amount of running just doesn't give your bones, muscles, tendons frequent enough stress to develop the capacity to withstand the rigors of distance running, of the activity. So every time you go out, it's like a brand new challenge, and it's really hard to increase your distance with that low level of consistency with running. The other thing that I see is people, they're running 1 or 2 days a week. They sign up for a marathon, a half marathon, and their training plan is 5 or 6 days of running a week. Or they have a New Year's resolution to run every day for January, and they're jumping into this training plan that is requiring a lot more frequent running very suddenly. And that sudden change in workload is what puts your tissues at risk for injury. So how can we be more consistent? I got this, the underlined phrase from the Chris Johnson Outside Magazine article that I talked about, and I just thought it was a really nice, concise thing to keep in mind. So go ahead, write it on a Post-it note, post it on your mirror. Recreational runners should run a minimum of 3 to 4 times per week on non-consecutive days while engaging in light aerobic activity and or strength training on non-running days. And that's just a really good goal for being a consistent runner and minimizing your injury. When you do want to increase from there for an upcoming event, first add an extra run to your week, then increase the distance and intensity of runs. That will give your body time to acclimate to that increased load. Give yourself plenty of time to train and build up to those longer distances. We've probably all heard of the 10% rule. This is a great place to start with increasing slowly. And this 10% is related to your mileage for the week, and it applies to both your total mileage and your longest run distance. So if you are currently running 4 days a week, 5 miles a day, and you want to start running 5 days a week, don't throw on another 5-mile run. You're going to back off on a couple of your runs. So you'll run 4 miles 3 days a week and then 5 miles twice a week. That puts you up to 22. And if you're like, great, that felt good, I want to do a little bit more, you can change a couple of those 4-milers into 5-mile runs, or you can keep some 4-milers and start adding on to your long run distance from there, 1 mile per week. The thing that the 10% rule kind of ignores is intensity. And we know that intensity does affect our load on our tissues. So by using the RPE, which is the rate of perceived exertion scale, it's a 1 to 10 scale on how intense the exercise is, we can kind of incorporate some of that, the speed work, the hill training, the tempo runs into how much load is our body experiencing each week. With this simple calculation of how hard was the run, how long was the run, we've got our unit of measurement. Total your units for the week and let that be your guide for increasing each week by 10%. Both of these, make sure you have that deload week every 4 to 6 weeks. So we can't just build and build and build. Sometimes our tissues need a little bit longer, deeper recovery time. So going into that RPE, rate of perceived exertion, I got this graphic from the Maximize Potential Treatment website, and you can find that link in the references. I like the colors. I think it makes it really clear for how hard are you working. Most of our running activity, our long runs, that kind of stuff is going to be in that 4 to 6 range. When we start doing the tempo and speed runs, you're going to see it go up to that vigorous activity or very hard activity ratings. Another great way to get injured is not listening to your body. So sticking to your training plan when you just aren't feeling it is a great way to get injured. And I got this kind of red light, yellow light, green light ideas from that Chris Johnson article in Outside Magazine, and it just really seems to be a nice way to explain how you're feeling and how you should then modify your training that day. So green light days, these are the days that we run for. This is why we all love running. You're rested, energetic, and motivated. Safe time to push, do your workout, hit your numbers. Don't get greedy, but have fun and enjoy it. The yellow light days, so you're feeling tired, stressed, sore, low energy, unmotivated. These are the days where you should get out there and know that you might not hit your numbers, you might not complete all your reps. That's okay. But get out there. A lot of times on days like this, if I get out the door and get started, I end up feeling better. But there might be days where you get out the door and you're like, I don't feel better, I want to go home. And that's a legitimate way to feel, and you should listen to your body on those days. On the red light days, so these are like really exhausted, really bad night's sleep, an adverse event, a loss of job, a loss of a loved one, those sorts of things. Skip your workout, go for a walk, take care of your mind and your stress levels, and then get back to running when you're ready. So how to have more green light days. Sometimes the issue is not with your running or your training plan, but with the rest of your life. And that really is where recovery comes into place. So these mobility, sleep, nutrition, and stress are super important, and I could probably do a lecture on each one. But just I wanted to include them in here as a reminder that really minor changes in some of these areas can make a good can make a big change in how you feel when you run and your running performance. So even 30 extra minutes of sleep a night can make you feel better the next day. Cleaning up your nutrition a little bit can really make you feel better and have more energy. So keeping those in mind. Another way to get injured is just keep on running right through that pain. And this one is tricky because, running doesn't always feel great. Having pain while you're running is pretty common. And there are sometimes when you can just keep running and other times when you shouldn't. So you should stop running when the pain is making you limp. So if it's causing altered gait mechanics, not only is that tissue injured to the point that it's telling you, I can't do this, you're potentially risking causing injury up the chain from changing that load distribution on other tissues. Stop running when the pain gets above an acceptable level. So I usually tell my patients that a 2 to 3 out of 10 is okay. Any more than that, stop. If your pain gets progressively worse as you run, you have increased pain or swelling for 24 hours after you run, or it prevents you from sleeping, stop running, go seek medical attention. Especially if that pain is over bony areas, so your shin and your foot bones are really susceptible to those bone stress injuries, stop running, seek medical attention. These are injuries that should not be ignored. If you wait and you run through it, you're probably going to end up in a boot and not running for a long time. Whereas if you can catch them early, your recovery will be quicker and faster. But if your pain decreases after warming up, stays at an acceptable level, and returns to baseline after 24 or 36 hours, it's usually okay to keep training through this pain. I would still go to see a physical therapist. Just because you go to see the PT doesn't mean you have to stop running. Oftentimes we can make some tweaks, some adjustments, help your pain, add some things to your stretching, your mobility, your strengthening program that helps this pain go away without stopping your running entirely. Another great way to get injured that I am always guilty of is skipping your warm-up and cool down. So when you are at rest, most of your blood is in your organs, in your brain, that area. And when you start running, your muscles have increased oxygen requirement that requires increased blood flow. And so your body has to divert the blood circulation from your organs and your brain to the rest of your muscles. This process is not instant. And if it's rushed, it can cause distress to your body, increasing the risk of injury. So warming up should include 5 to 10 minutes of brisk walking, like really fast walking. You're not running, but you're not leisurely strolling either. You're really making that nice, making a nice pace, starting to get your heart rate up. You can incorporate some light skipping, high knees, side shuffles, butt kickers, just kind of get your body moving and also get your brain just ready to run. Cool down should include 5 minutes of walking. Bring that heart rate down slowly. Don't just run in the door and lay on the ground. And then once your 5 minutes of walking is good, once your heart rate's back down to normal, you can include some of the more static passive stretching, foam rolling, those sorts of things. Another great way to get injured is avoiding the weight room. And I know runners hate the weight room, but body weight exercises alone are not enough to train your tissues for the demands of running and honestly the rest of your life. The strength training will improve your performance and reduce your risk of injury. It should be done 2 to 3 days a week on easy or your non-running days. For runners especially, the priority should be heavy, slow resistance training. This is because the muscular endurance, your power, all of that is taken care of during your runs, during your speed days, during your hill training. That's not what your tissues need. What your tissues need is to be able to manage that heavy, slow resistance to really build the tissue load capacity. And so we do this by performing 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 8 repetitions at 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max. You do not have to do 1 rep max testing to figure out what 60 to 80% is. If you can do 5 to 7 repetitions and don't want to do any more, that's a heavy enough weight. If you can only do 2 or 3 repetitions, that's too heavy. If you can do 10, 12, 15, that's too light. So try to get that sweet spot where 5 to 7 feels pretty hard. You're not sure you could do one more. Personally, I really like the 5x5 rep scheme when I'm lifting. So that's 5 sets of 5 repetitions. And I complete these sets with a timer going off every minute. That just really helps me stay on track, limits my rest interval, helps me stay focused and efficient. If you're going heavier and you need a little bit more time, you could set your timer for 90 seconds or 2 minutes. But my usual routine when I'm short on time, busy week, and I just need to get some lifting in, I'll do the 5x5 of the push press, squat, and deadlift. It's a pretty efficient total body strengthening routine. I like to do it in that order. So I warm up my push press, start with the empty bar, start working on that push press, get to that heavy weight, and then I start my 5x5s. Do those sets, timer stops. I usually will just take that weight and start warming up my squats. Add weight to the bar, do my 5x5, same thing for the deadlift. And otherwise, if you're like, what is this lady talking about? I don't know what any of these movements are. I don't know how to do them right. Deadlifts always hurt my back. Squats always hurt my knees. That is a great time to go get some professional help with your form, because there are ways to modify, ways to adjust all of these movements. Squats and deadlifts are really functional movements for your daily life. And so doing them right and doing them well under load will make everything that you do in life easier and prevent injuries from simple things like picking up a child or a heavy box of books. And so if you need that help, a physical therapy consult can really help to develop an individualized strengthening plan for you and where your weaknesses are. That being said, I am starting an Alpenglow Physio Get Strong membership program. It's going to roll out in April, and this is going to be focused strength programming for runners and mountain athletes. I often will participate in CrossFit, and I really enjoy that style of workout. The strength training with CrossFit has definitely helped my running, my mountain biking. I'm much stronger and less predisposed to injury, but it's a lot to take on CrossFit and training for ultra running at the same time. And so trying to manage the balance of what parts of CrossFit are really benefiting me and what parts are not, and how can I manage my energy. I've started doing a lot of my own programming. And so with this, I'm sharing that programming with everyone. And so you will receive emails 3 times a week with your workout of the day. You will also have access to the weekly workouts and they will change every week. The workouts are designed to be done within 30 minutes and complement your training plan, whether that's running, mountain biking, or skiing. There are gym, home, and light programming options each day to accommodate your training. The gym would be the ideal if you have access to that equipment, if you have access to those heavy weights, but we don't always have time. We're traveling, we're at home, we need to get the workout in, and we don't have time to go to the gym. That's where the home level comes in. It's still pretty intense, but maybe a little bit different based on not having the access to those heavier weights. And then the light programming is great for people who haven't done a lot of strength programming or haven't done a lot of strength training, are building up into doing the gym program, or those who have a race coming up. So maybe you do the gym program, you're lifting heavier during your base mileage, your base blocks, but then as you come closer into race season, you don't want to be sore going into those races. So that's when you would switch to the light programming. I am growing my library of videos. This will be one of them, kind of with showing some different movement tips, some modifications. And you can get more information about all of this on my website. There's a info box to kind of sign up, get your name on the list. And once we're ready to have people start start paying, then I will give you more info. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got something out of it. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please contact me. My email is alpenglowphysio@gmail.com. You can also go on my website and contact me there, or even schedule an online one-on-one consultation where we can meet online or in person, do a running gait analysis, just talk about your training, talk about your weightlifting, all of those things. So contact me if you have any of those needs. Thank you so much.